I regret buying this controller.
Well, if you're ready and you're set, don't forget to go. When I'll be on the mic, you know my rhymes are not slow.
This is the Victrix PRO BFG controller for PlayStation 5, and I got this controller a couple of weeks ago. Should be up to 2 months as of now, and I have been using this controller to play games on my PlayStation 5 because that is what the controller is made for. Is a PlayStation 5 third-party controller. And let me tell you why I got this controller.
My whole style racketeer, yeah. I see you all stare, so hold up.
When I got my PlayStation 5 Slim, it came with just one controller, which is this one, the regular classic PlayStation 5 controller. Why this PlayStation controller is great for many reasons. I kind of like wanted more because I have used an Xbox controller previously in the past, and I liked how the direction buttons were down here and the thumbstick was up here, and so I, for some reason, felt like that would be better than the PlayStation layout, having a controller where the direction button is up here and the direction button is down here, this thumbstick is up here. And so I started looking for other third-party PlayStation 5 controllers that will work with the PlayStation 5 but were similar to the Xbox controller. Of course, I cannot get the Xbox controller because the Xbox controller will not work with the PlayStation 5. However, there were 3 options that I had to choose from that will work with the PlayStation 5, and basically had the option of the thumbstick being above here. There's not 3 options actually, 2 options. I'll get it. The third option was a Pro PlayStation 5 controller. So it looks exactly like this. The Pro PlayStation 5 controller looks exactly like this, but it has other options with it. I'm just gonna put like a picture of it right here so you can see that. But yeah, it has the exact same layout, just with a few modifications. But apart from that, I was left with 2 other options. One is a controller from Razer. I have forgotten the name, so I'll put a picture of it with the name also on screen so you can see that. So I had the option from the controller from Razer, and the other option was the Victrix BFG Pro, or rather Victrix PRO BFG. Name is kind of confusing. Everybody puts Pro at the end. Anyways, this is the Victrix PRO BFG. I got this over the Razer for 2 major reasons. Number one is that unlike the Razer, which the buttons are fixed in place, and also frankly the PlayStation 5 controller, the buttons are all fixed in place, I can actually change the layout on this controller. So I can take out these screws here and here and swap out this layout. So as you can see, this looks like the standard PlayStation 5 controller layout, with the thumbsticks being down here and the direction and the other button being up here. However, I can swap it out. I can take out the screws and I can bring this direction down here and take this thumbstick up here and have that work like an Xbox controller. Also, the layout of the whole entire controller is built like an Xbox controller. It feels like an Xbox controller when you're using it. So I really liked the way this controller looked, and the fact that you could swap out the keys for anything you want. Another reason why I got this over the Razer is that this was said to have a longer battery life, which I can attest to that the battery life on this controller is actually really good. So battery life, ability to swap out the keys. Not only can you like swap out the buttons and replace them, you can also swap out the thumbsticks for like a longer one, or one with a convex rather than a concave finishing here. And you can swap out these direction buttons for like the typical ones that looks like the one on the PlayStation 5 controller. Even like there's a third option, there are 3 options for this. And then yeah, there are also extra buttons back here. So I have an extra button here, and then here and here. And this was like some of the reasons that drew me closer to getting this controller. Then it was also cheaper, I think, than the Razer controller. I will have to confirm that, but I think it's cheaper than the Razer controller. So yes, the Victrix PRO BFG controller retails at Amazon for around $150, while the Razer controller retails around, the Razer PS5 controller retails around $200. That's $199. So $200 and $150. So there was this $50 difference in price, and I felt like this was better. This had a longer battery life, and this is cheaper. So why not? So I got this as my second controller to use alongside my other controller, and also for the controller that I'll be able to swap out the buttons and use it the way I like, similar to an Xbox controller. So let me tell you other things that I liked about this controller before I go to the things that doesn't really make sense about this controller and why I regret buying this controller. I already talked about the way this controller feels in the hands. It feels very like ergonomic, feels right when you just hold it, and I like that again you can swap out the keys like I said previously. I like that about the controller. There are other things about this controller that I think is worth talking about, but wasn't really a selling point for me personally, which is number one, you can swap this controller. You can use it with a PlayStation 5, a PlayStation 4, or a PC. Another thing is that you can use this controller both wired and wirelessly, like a PS5 controller, and then like a regular controller actually. And yeah, the last thing I want to mention is that you can set the trigger buttons to either go deep or become very shallow. So right now set to shallow, but if I pull these buttons here and then press, you can see it goes deep, and then I release those buttons and now it goes deep. It's no longer shallow any longer. But once I press these buttons again, I release them and now they're not shallow again. Just something to note. Yeah, and that is it about this controller. That's what makes this controller very unique.
Never is around quitter. Deliver this microphone with my transmitter. Whoa.
Now moving to the things that I do not like about this controller, and frankly why I regret buying this controller. So first of all, I'll say the most annoying thing about this controller is that it does not have haptics. No haptics, no vibration motors in this controller. It means that when I'm playing games on the controller, no matter what kind of games I'm playing on the controller, nothing. I don't feel anything. There's nothing to feel from the controller, and maybe I really like underestimated how much haptics was really important in playing games, because coming from the regular PlayStation 5 controller, which has a lot of haptics in it, probably the controller with the most haptics in the world, there's really something to playing game and then feeling whatever is happening in the game and the controller that you're using to play the game. For example, you're playing EA FC 24 and then you get tackled by an opponent, the controller like vibrates, so you don't even have to see it to know that you were hit by an opponent. Or if you play a shot and you hit the crossbar rather than the keeper punching it out, you also feel the vibration on the controller, so you know exactly what happened in the game from the vibrations on the controller without having to see what happens on the TV. Another game that I play a lot, I spend a lot of my time in, is in Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West is probably my favorite game ever, and in Horizon you have to kind of like pull bows and arrows to like shoot down the enemies, and so you use that using the trigger buttons. And if you know about the PlayStation 5 controllers, you know that the trigger buttons have haptics in there, so that when you pull and try to like shoot an arrow, there's like a delayed effect, and there's a lot going on with the controller, which kind of like tells you what's happening in the game. But with this, none of that exists. So all the trigger buttons, all the haptics, all the vibrations, nothing. So you kind of like playing the game with only your vision, which removes from the experience of the game, frankly, and is one of the reasons why I really do not like this controller. Another reason I do not like this controller is that these shoulder buttons, the L2 and R2, they are really, really easy to trigger, really, really easy. Like basically my hands just resting on it like this can trigger the button. That's it. And so I have moments of time when I'm like not using the shoulder buttons, my hand is just in a natural resting position, and then those buttons trigger. I have things moving all around my screen just because my hands are resting on the shoulder button. Naturally, I thought that it's because of this shallow option. So I thought maybe because the controller is in this shallow option, so sensitivity is increased such that if my hands just rest on it, it's able to trigger or pick up that interaction. So I switched it to the deep option rather than the shallow option. I switched it so that I will have to press the button down with like to the end before the button actually triggers. But I realized that it did not actually work that way. Like even if it's in a deep option like this, my hand just resting on it still triggers the button, which is really annoying. I thought like when I learned about this feature, I thought that it will only trigger if I press the button all the way to the end, and so it gives me the option of if I want to trigger the button without pressing to the end or pressing to the end. But I realized that it is just just a physical feeling thing. Like it doesn't matter if it's shallow or if it's deep, it doesn't matter at all, as long as it feels any form of weight on it whatsoever, it's going to trigger. And that was really annoying about this controller. That was really, really annoying about this controller. Thirdly, there are no mics and no speakers on the controller at all. This is kind of minor. I can deal with the fact that there are no mics and there are no speakers because I do not like have friends that I'm always like playing online games with and having to speak to them through the voice chat. I don't play online. I don't even have the PlayStation subscription. I had at the time. I tried it out for like 3 months and then I unsubscribed because I wasn't really using it. I wasn't playing with anyone online. I don't even like playing online, to be honest. The game experience is so different. I hate it. So I wasn't really chatting with anyone. So I don't really mind not having mics or speakers because there's no speakers to it, unlike the regular PlayStation 5 controller. That one is a bit more useful in games like FIFA, like again, or EA24. You will hear like the whistle, ref whistle come through the speakers of the controller, or if you score a goal, the sound of the net comes through the speakers of the controller. Also, in Need for Speed, when I'm being pursued by the police radio, basically what they're doing, what they're saying, comes through the speakers of the controller on the regular PlayStation 5 controller. But this does not have a speaker on board. So all that sound comes through the speakers of my TV or the speakers of my speaker and my regular speaker at home. Nothing comes out through the controller. So bit of a bummer, but not a big issue. The bigger issue though is that on the PlayStation 5 controller, there is a button to mute your speakers. To mute your microphone rather. So if I press the button, I'm able to mute my microphone. So nothing I say goes through the microphone. Nobody's able to hear me on the other side of the call. And I can press that button again to unmute the microphone and then speak to my friends when we are online. However, when you press down that button on the PlayStation 5 controller, one second, let me show you the button. Here's the button I'm talking about. This is the button here. That's red as orange. I'm just going to unmute it. So to mute my mic, I press it once. And then to unmute my mic, I press it again. And my mic is unmuted. However, you can hear that my PlayStation 5 is currently on. And this button is very useful in the sense that if I want to mute all the sounds coming off my PlayStation 5, I just hold it down like, yes, and now that's all muted. Just by holding that down button, I'm able to mute all the sounds from my PlayStation 5. My PlayStation 5 is on mute. And if I hold it again, it's on mute. Hold down, mute, hold down, on mute. Very useful feature that is not present on the Victrix BFG Pro or Pro BFG. Keep mixing up the name. Yes, but the very useful feature that is not present on the Victrix Pro BFG. So anytime I want to mute all the audio on my PlayStation 5, maybe I'm playing game and then I receive a call saying to mute all audio so I can pick up the call, I have to start looking for my TV remote to mute the TV, because this does not have the Victrix BFG Pro, or Pro BFG rather, does not have this button. Still on the buttons, I want to say that the button presses on the Victrix Pro BFG doesn't feel really quality. It doesn't feel like the PlayStation 5 buttons. Whatever buttons I'm pressing, from the direction to the trigger buttons to the thumbstick, it just feels very, very cheap. It doesn't feel as quality as that of the PlayStation 5 controller. So for example, you can hear this and compare that to this. Not only you can hear the difference in the sound, but it's more than just the way it sounds. It actually feels really different. This regular PlayStation 5 controller buttons feels very, very good. Feel the buttons, when we press the button, it feels like quality. It feels like a quality controller. It feels really quality. This lacks that. This doesn't feel like that when you're using the controller to play games. The buttons feels very cheap. It feels like a very old Sega controller kind of when you press the button. So yeah, that also takes away from the experience of actually gaming using this controller. And I mentioned that this controller has the option to connect wirelessly or to connect through a wireless receiver, and I will show you. I'll just put an image of the wireless receiver on screen. Right now it's connected to my PlayStation 5 controller, so if I turn this on, it's going to connect wirelessly to my PlayStation 5 controller. However, the story is not that straight, so there's a lot I need to get into. First of all, I should let you know that at some point while using this controller, my wireless receiver just stopped working. Didn't work. Again, just on its own, stopped working. And so for a while, I couldn't use this wirelessly. I had to use this with the wire, because once the wireless receiver stopped working, there was no other way to connect this controller to the PlayStation 5 unless using the USB cable that came with it, which is a bummer. I was somehow able to get it to start working again after connecting to a Windows laptop and trying to download the Victrix software to try, I don't know, do something, but that didn't work. I wasn't like able to download the software. I tried downloading it and installing, that didn't work. The receiver just started working again on its own. So it stopped working on its own, started working again on its own. So that's how it's still working right now, but at some point it stopped working, and that was really bad. I was not able to use this controller wirelessly when it stopped working. And you would have probably maybe had thought that you could probably buy a replacement receiver for this controller, which is a fair thought to have. I had that thought too, and I went to search for a replacement receiver for this controller, and guess what? I did not find. Victrix was not selling a replacement receiver for this controller, not up until I think last week or 2 weeks ago. I'm just going to say 2 weeks ago. So this controller have existed for maybe probably up to a year at this point, and they just started selling a replacement receiver 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, that's when they started selling a replacement receiver. So there's a lot of threads on Reddit about this controller, and people complain that the receiver went bad and there's nothing they can do about it. Somebody even made the suggestion of going to Walmart, buying a new controller, replacing the receiver, and then returning the controller. Bad idea, don't do that. But yes, that's like the extent at which people had to go to find the replacement receiver for this controller, because once the one that came with it goes bad, you are basically out of luck, or you were out of luck up until 2 weeks ago. However, even though Victrix now sells a replacement receiver, they sell it at $35. $35. That is a lot of money for a receiver, for a 2.4 gigahertz receiver. That is asking for a lot. That's a lot of money. A lot of money. I don't know what Victrix were thinking, what they are thinking, because that is basically half the price of a brand new PlayStation 5 controller. So you can get a brand new PlayStation 5 controller at $70. If you're going to buy it second hand or used, you can get it even cheaper. And you are selling the receiver for this at $35. Victrix, what's going on? What's going on? Talk to us. Let us help you. That is not fair to customers at all, I think. And I'll get to pricing of this controller later on this video because that's again another problem. But at $35 for a replacement receiver, that is really bad, especially considering that this controller does not have Bluetooth. Yes, controller doesn't have Bluetooth. It means that even if you want to connect this controller wirelessly to any devices that have Bluetooth, either a PlayStation 5 or your PC or your mobile phone for that matter, you cannot connect this controller to it because the controller does not have Bluetooth inbuilt. No Bluetooth. This is 2024. Who makes a device, a portable device, without Bluetooth? Who? Even the PlayStation 5 controller that doesn't need Bluetooth because it's working directly with the PlayStation 5 has the Bluetooth. Victrix, wow, it was a bummer for me to discover and learn that this controller does not have Bluetooth. It was one of there are so many, I've mentioned so many annoying things about this controller, but that is also one of the most annoying things because it means that if I want to use this controller for my mobile phone, my phone, or on my laptop, I just want to connect it wirelessly with Bluetooth. I cannot, which means that I cannot use this controller with a Mac. I cannot because the wireless receiver only works with the PlayStation 5 or works with the Windows laptop, which is the Victrix software. And that Victrix software is now available on the Mac. So plugging the controller to my Mac is completely pointless. Plugging the wireless receiver to my Mac is completely pointless. So this controller cannot work with my Mac or with my phone. It can only work with my PlayStation 5 or a PC using the wireless receiver a cable, which if that goes bad, is only going to work through a USB cable. That is just completely unacceptable if you ask me. I feel like it doesn't make sense on any point. Anybody you ask, basically, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all on any level. So they should do better. If they're going to make a version 2 of this, they should make sure that it comes with Bluetooth because it is actually really needed. Which then brings me to the price. I got this controller used refurbished on Amazon for $101 or $105, but I got it for around $100, which compared to a regular PlayStation 5 controller, a regular PlayStation 5 controller is just $17 for a brand new one. So for $70 you can get a brand new package PlayStation 5 controller, but I got this used at $100 and the brand new of this is around $152. Considering all the things I just spoke about, it not having haptics, no vibration, no Bluetooth, no speakers, no microphone, I don't see why this controller should be more expensive than a regular PlayStation 5 controller. Even if maybe it is more expensive due to the company being not as big as Sony and not able to produce this in mass like Sony would, I don't see why anybody should buy this over the regular PlayStation 5 controller. There's not much value in buying this controller over the regular PlayStation 5 controller except the ability to swap out the buttons wherever you want to put them, where I think in that case that is a very niche scenario. Not everybody will want to do that. Even though I myself wanted a controller where I can have the trigger and the thumbsticks up here, I don't think it was enough sacrifice for all of the other things that are missing from this controller, like the haptics, like the microphone, like the speakers, like the Bluetooth. I feel like all of those things are priority over wherever the buttons are going to stay. So you may be able to just swap out the buttons and pay like $70 more for this controller. I think it is not worth it at all. It doesn't make any financial sense at all. So I think this controller being sold at $150 or maybe $100 to $150, depending on if you buy a brand new one, like used one, I think is not worth it for the value. I think you get better value if you just spend less of that $70 and get a brand new PlayStation 5 controller. Plus, the PlayStation 5 controller actually works with your PC and with your Mac because it has Bluetooth in it inbuilt and works with your phone as well. Works with both iPhone and Android. So it's just a better controller all around over this controller. I really regret buying this controller because it doesn't make financial sense for all the trade-offs that I have to take just for the ability to have a couple of extra buttons, I'm able to swap these buttons, I think it is not really worth it at all. If I could go back in time after I've had this experience and this knowledge, if I could go back in time and buy a new controller again, I'd rather buy a new PlayStation 5 controller at $70 than buy this controller, whatever it is, than buy this. It's not worth it. So if you are thinking about buying this controller for your PlayStation 5, if you think that the ability to swap these buttons is really that important to you, that you are able to, you are willing to like trade off haptics, trade off speakers, trade off Bluetooth, trade off the chance that your wireless receiver might go bad, but willing to trade off all of that just to swap these buttons, then maybe it might be worth it. Also, the battery life is long. Like I said, the battery life is really longer than the regular PlayStation 5 controller battery life. So if that's a thing that you're willing to like get and then trade off all of the other things that I spoke about earlier in this video, then maybe it might be worth it for you. But for the majority of people, and me included, I think this controller is not worth it at all, and I really regret buying this controller.
It's your black boy from K-Town on that jazz. And I'm real happy tonight, ladies. I'm spitting with the...
So yeah, that is my review of the Victrix Pro BFG. As of now, I still play most games using my regular PlayStation 5. This has more time on my hand than this. I've spent time playing with this way more than I've spent time playing with this. In fact, I really only use this when this is dead nowadays. So once this is dead and I need to charge it, I really only use this controller as an option. But if I have a chance to pick between these two and are both fully charged, I always go with this. So I hope this video helps anyone out there who is kind of like confused and wanted to take a decision on if to buy this controller or if to buy a second regular PlayStation 5 controller. I would advise that you go for this one. If you're looking for something a bit more pro, you can get the Pro PlayStation 5 controller. And I don't know about the I don't know how good the Razer controller is, so I can't really speak on that. I only know between this and this. I can tell that this is way better than what this is supposed to be. So yeah, thank you and catch you in the next video.
Make some noise. When I say make some, you say noise.